Rude people block his tractor. Have no idea that won't stop him.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
Davao is a farmer who owns a modest field near the village center. The town's population is around 2,000, but it's slowly been growing and modernizing. Recently, a market opened up not far from Davao's farmhouse. He welcomed the new addition since now he'd be able to walk less than 5 minutes to buy his groceries. But he had no clue of the impact the new shopping area was about to have on his life, and it was not a positive one. As it was right in the village center where there are already many other buildings, the new market didn't have a dedicated parking area. So shoppers parked on the adjacent streets and walked the rest of the way. But it soon became clear that this wouldn't suffice. The market was attracting a lot of people, and there just wasn't enough street parking available for all of them. Some of them decided to get creative, not knowing who it would affect. One day, Davao noticed that people were parking in his field so they could go shopping in the new market. A couple cars didn't bother him, so he didn't pay it much mind. But as the weeks went by, it was clear that word was spreading. More and more cars were parking on Davao's field, especially on the weekends. It became so full that he was unable to do field work on some days, and it made him stop. Davao started going outside and asking people not to park in his field as they were pulling in. Those who encountered him did retreat, but if he wasn't out there on the field, it was a free-for-all. He couldn't just stand outside all day blocking cars, though. He had things to do. He became increasingly desperate. He racked his brain for ways to stop the flow of unwanted cars on his property, but none of the options seemed promising. In a particularly angry moment, Davao started thinking about slashing the car's tires, but he knew that would get him in trouble. He also thought about building a fence around the field, but that would be expensive, and it would also make it harder for him to bring his own vehicles into the field. He had to think of something that would deter people while not interfering with his life and habits. And then he began to hatch a plan. One day, Davao came outside to find entire rows of cars parked on his field. He took a deep breath. He chuckled a little at the thought of the chaos he was about to create. He slowly walked to the other side of the property, climbed into a large red tractor, and started the engine. He drove straight toward the parked cars, plow in tow, churning the dirt in his wake. He'd reached a breaking point, but revenge would be sweet. Passers-by started to take notice of the tractor. People walking nearby stopped to watch the fed-up farmer as he exacted his revenge against all those inconsiderate drivers. He drove around the rows of cars, plowing deep trenches across the whole field. It was clear that they would have an extremely hard time maneuvering their small sedans through the turned-over mud and uneven surface. There was no escape. Those who didn't have cars on that field laughed at the sight, and one person even started recording the whole thing. But one woman was not amused. One woman, owner of a silver Peugeot, was none too happy about what Davao had done. Huffing and puffing, she got into her car and tried to drive out of the field. She didn't get too far, as the wheels soon got stuck in the mud. But she was nothing if not persistent. But then she pulled out her phone and did something Davao wasn't expecting. The angry woman called the police, and when they arrived, they were stunned at what they'd found. It was obvious they'd never had to deal with an incident like this before. They were immediately approached by a number of angry car owners, demanding that something be done about the farmer's transgression. Some of them even wanted him arrested. But then the cops spoke to Davao. He told them about the hordes of cars that parked on his land and how the drivers were too lazy to walk across the road. The police heard Davao out and had to agree that the drivers were indeed in the wrong. After making sure he hadn't intentionally done any damage to the cars, the cops turned to the drivers and delivered some bad news. There's nothing they could do. This was, after all, Davao's property, and he had a right to do on it what he pleased. They, on the other hand, were trespassing. Davao could have technically taken legal action against the car owners for trespassing, but leaving their cars stranded among trenches of mud was enough justice for him. He had made sure that no one would ever park on his property again. Meanwhile, the video of Davao's revenge was spreading on social media and in the news. The video of the farmer exacting sweet revenge on the inconsiderate drivers quickly went viral, with people all over the world praising his actions. Everyone loved how he took matters into his own hands and came up with a creative solution to his problem. One commenter wrote, Farmer wasn't grumpy, he was smart. No one has the right to park on private property. Good for him. And another wrote, perfect, that didn't cost him much. He didn't involve the authorities and he got the point across. I'm certain. Even today in my community, people are willing to talk things out as they always have. Unfortunately, not everyone is raised that way. But the video is an indication of a growing problem with illegal parking, and people are simply not going to stand for it any longer. A group of Brazilian pranksters posted a video that showed them dealing sweet justice to a driver who had illegally parked in a handicap spot. Once the car was left unattended, they covered the entire vehicle in blue and white post-it notes, eventually forming the shape of a universal handicap symbol. The driver was none too pleased and stormed off, but the video went viral and helped raise awareness about this important issue. But that's not the only instance of hilarious revenge on illegal parkers. People are fed up with illegal parking, so they're coming up with hilarious and creative solutions to the problem, like DeVow did. Many of us will just simmer quietly and get on with our day, but there are some who will not stand for these infractions any longer. Lazy and inconsiderate parkers, beware.